The next call is a split call. David Clendon, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, the Minister of Justice recently in an article in Law Talk talked about the legal profession, and she confirmed the national government's respect for rule of law, in particular the principle that everyone is subject to the law and the law must be applied equally to all. And I'll quote briefly from that argument. The Minister said, "We'd all agree it's wrong for someone to receive preferential treatment in our courts. That is, if you have more money or look a certain way, you might get a different outcome to someone else in your situation." And the Minister is dead right. That is not a situation we want in New Zealand, but sadly that is the situation we are confronting in our justice system in New Zealand. So we have academics, judges, legal professionals, advocacy groups, people who are embroiled, just everyday members of the public, embroiled in the justice system. And what they're seeing is a user pay system emerging in justice. They're seeing large numbers of people going to quite desperate measures on occasion to endeavour to get justice. They're seeing people foregoing it altogether because they simply can't afford to enter the justice system. That's a failure of the rule of law by any measure. The national government has ushered this in, and sadly the opportunity in the budget to reverse that trend, to properly fund the justice sector, has been missed. It's one of the many missed opportunities in this budget to restore some decent funding to the justice system. It's perhaps naive to suggest that every New Zealander will gain equal access to justice, will get outcomes they want, but we should at least seek to ensure a minimum level of fair expectation of reasonable access to justice regardless of circumstance. This budget continues the trend of cuts for most of the agencies that might contribute to producing a more equitable outcome, a more just and decent outcome. Funding has remained static in many instances, and in the context of rising costs, inevitably rising costs, they effectively are cuts. The agencies, the resources available to agencies are stretched to the limit, which has inevitably resulted more people being denied access to justice. Take the example of a person, typically a woman, who might be seeking a protection order in the context of a relationship that's become abusive or become violent. The likely cost of engaging a lawyer to prepare to do the affidavits, to present the documents, to do the minimum necessary legal work is likely to sit around $2,000. And that's often a sum that is well beyond the means of a person who's in that very unfortunate situation. Enter the legal aid system, one would hope, intended to provide financial support to people who cannot, by their own means, get access to it. Unfortunately, legal aid expenditure has been dropping in nominal terms since 2011, when it peaked at around $166 million. In the current budget, it sits around $112 million, the lowest in nominal terms it's been since 2008. About a $5.5 million reduction in legal aid for criminal cases, a $5.4 million reduction in legal aid for family court cases. Access to legal aid is determined largely by income thresholds. A person earning annually the princely sum of $27,540 is deemed to be too well off to be able to be eligible for legal aid. A person working 40 hours a week at the minimum wage of $14.75 misses the cut by something like 10%. They're too well off earning minimum wage and working a 40-hour week. So the Legal Services Amendment Act has put an interest component onto legal aid, which means there's something like a $6 million liability now, interest liability, on some of our most vulnerable, least well-off people. So given time, I could offer a list of other appropriations that effectively represent funding cuts to both governmental and community agencies, NGOs that exist to support people's well-being and access to judges, community law centres, for example, victim support, the refuges have all seen real cuts, often nominal cuts, and certainly real cuts in spending power. So we can do better this. New Zealand's better than this. We must do better. The national government must realise citizens deserve better. This budget has let New Zealanders down.
Mr. Speaker.
I call Stephen Browning, 5 minutes.